Alright, time for another draft physics video presentation. Draft science here on YouTube. Yeah. On YouTube for no other reason than because we have chosen to allow corporations to control all of our public space, and that sucks. Yes, I would go for the public option if there was such a thing. The library controlled internet or some kind of bullshit like that. Something that was we the people, ultimately accountable to we the people. I would prefer. Not for profit, something or other. That's what we should have the option of. Instead of these, like I said, the worst possible. I mean, you really can't have a worse. I mean, it could be like DuPont internet, and that would be better, frankly, you know, than something controlled by a marketing company. I mean, the worst possible business you could be in terms of corruption, is running the internet. I mean, the worst possible one. A company devoted that makes more money by manipulating people, by defrauding them, by shystering them, by it's lawyers writing the legal code or something. It's just so bad a circumstance to be in. Just too stupid. This show we can't have a civilization. It's just not possible. Human beings are too stupid to fix the mechanisms they have for their interaction. Too stupid to figure out that, yeah, maybe protesting doesn't work if half your protesters are really just looters and pillagers who are just looking for an opportunity to burn shit down. Yeah, maybe then protesting doesn't work. Maybe you have to change the rules a little bit. Or else you have to just, shoot them all and gas them all and then tell people, well, yeah, you can protest, but as soon as some of your protesters break the law, we're just going to have to shoot all of you. I mean, you have to fix things. You can't just sit there and say, let's leave everything broken. But apparently that's what we're going to end up doing, because we can't figure out that the first thing we got to fix is the instrument of our capacity to even vote and do all this stuff. It all has to be fair and right and proper, and if you can't fix that, you really have nothing. But anyway, that's a whole nother subject, so we won't go there. But Google is just too stupid a company to be running anything. It's just a marketing company. It should be in a cellar somewhere, covered in sewage. Speaking of sewage, just throw in the Baldy Catz rag. So he just represents the typical standard intellectual piece of shit. They're so, they use this Dunning-Kruger thing. They're just so Dunning-Kruger. They're just so fucking stupid. They don't know how fucking stupid they are. And yet they walk around pretentious with their little, pocket protector, their little nerdy code badges or whatever. They can do some programming, or they can do one thing right, and they do everything else worse shit. They have no credibility, really, in terms of no merit, except they can recite, these silly songs. It's like some asshole who spends his life trying to memorize, every baseball player's batting average or something. Just stupid. They don't really know anything, just to pretend they're smart, It's all pretend. And he's just a typical example of this pretentious thing that happens to people when they think they're smart, and they're not. They're full of shit. Can't back up what they're saying. They really haven't thought about what they're saying. They just say this shit because somebody said it and they remember it, and so they're reciting it like the capital of a city or something. It's not anything. It's not real knowledge. It's not real understanding. It's nothing they had to build. They don't know how to build an idea, out of elemental pieces. It's a very deceptive kind of fake merit. Not that all of it isn't. Even people who win a gold medal at the Olympics, there's a whole bunch of people that would have won if something stupid didn't happen to them. They didn't fall off their skateboard when they were 7 and rip apart their whatever embody, some tendon named after somebody, or do something else stupid. But they would have won if. So the best is never really the best. It's just the best that survived the gauntlet of bullshit you have to survive to even have an opportunity to be, declared the winner. So it's all just horrible horseshit. Life sucks. Don't make it. Don't make any of it. Don't feed it. Don't support it. Don't defend it. Okay? Just let it gracefully die out because it's a menace. Alright, so I was going to do a subject video and just kind of point out the particle zoo as a pile of shit. The whole standard model is just such nonsense, useless, trivial rubbish. It doesn't play any role, it doesn't make any sense. They've all these fake properties, this spin thing they gave everything has some sort of spin, they gave everything a frequency. It's just all crap. I don't know why you people fall for it. It's so crappy. But instead, I ended up seeing a minute physics video that just needs to be ragged on, and then some other guy who makes physics videos, and he's full of shit. He's got the wave virus, and stupid. It's so bad, and this is just so bad. But it is an illustration of how evil Google is. Just because this minute physics guy gets all of these views and all these subscribers, and there's this other guy who's been doing this for a year or so. And he actually works pretty hard on his videos, no doubt. So that's minute physics again. I don't know. It shouldn't be there. This is the one I was looking for. Atoms and Sporks. He's sort of implying it's making fun of quarks, maybe, but he's a believer in all that horse shit. So there's a point in this video where he starts talking about what quantum mechanics is, and I think that's worth a laugh. So anyway, I figure that might be worth playing with, but I mean, very low view numbers on most of his videos. 2.6k subscribers, and like I said, he does go to some effort to produce these videos, and gets no love from Google, and it just demonstrates just how the system isn't a good system. It's not, the best doesn't rise to the top or any of that kind of shit. It's just a shit system. So I don't know why this one is here. Who's this one? Get rid of this playlist crap. Okay, maybe that's just the playlist I had open. I don't know. I thought I had another one of the Sport guys videos, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. Alright, so let's just deal with this. Because it's a just so clearly illustrates how full of shit these people are. I mean, he makes a statement later here where it says, oh yeah, this is all proven. It's just terrible. So, on with the bad show, I guess.
If you take a laser and shine it at a wall with 2 holes in it, you have the famous double slit experiment.
Right, famous. It's famous, and yet you can't accurately describe it. And it's, Feynman said, it's the foundation of quantum mechanics, this mystery. And yet you can't, just like I said, to save their life, they can't accurately describe 2 frickin' slits.
Were waves coming through 2 slits.
Yeah, so they draws it again, the magical bullshit way that doesn't work, okay? These 2 waves coming through the middle of these slits isn't the math. It won't create the double slit pattern. It doesn't work, and yet they just keep doing it, okay? It's based on Young's analysis in 1801, okay, where he didn't even know what the double slit pattern really was, that there was 2 patterns superimposed on each other. There is in fact 2 patterns, and you can't create the 2 patterns with this diagram. It doesn't work. Okay, so he's going to basically show us kind of a single slit pattern. And again, the single slit doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. You can't do it with water waves, and you can't do it with sound waves. It obviously doesn't make any sense that one wave goes into one slit and some magical way 2 waves pop out. And it is 2 waves. That's what the math is describing, the functions of 2 waves. The sine theta, the angle changes from the same points. The same points are the center of the wave. That's the math, Puro. You're just too stupid to pretend it's something other than two waves. Just like he's drawing two waves here, and the two waves will not create the real double slit pattern. So it's all just horseshit. It's just garbage. And you people say, okay, I trust these people, even though they're doing it right in front of me, even though right in front of you they're deceiving you. They're simplifying it so much that it isn't even close to the truth, and it really isn't even close to the truth. I mean, they've left out a hugely important feature and just pretended it isn't there because they have no way to make it make sense. They can't make it make sense without putting their waves in places that are preposterous. That is, right on the surfaces. Right on the point somebody logical who looks at the experiment might say, well, it seems like the stuff that goes through the middle of that slit doesn't get disturbed much, but the stuff that goes near the surface gets disturbed a lot and changes which direction it goes. I mean, it's just so bad.
Interfere with each other to be bright in some places on the wall and dark in others.
Right, so this is not the double slit pattern at all, okay? It's just nowhere even close. The center isn't especially bright, okay? Well, it is bright, don't get me wrong. It's not especially bright. And obviously you get lots of pattern going these other ways, and then you have a place that gets dark, and then it lights up again, and then gets dark, and then it lights up again. It's two patterns. This is just complete horseshit. Two waves don't create the real pattern. This is just nonsense, and they just do it right in front of you. This is the cornerstone of their building, and it's a mess. And you're saying, I trust them on the rest of the building. Okay, I mean, they've put a cornerstone and they've made it out of like paper mache, and it's there's no flat sides on it. It's a big lump of, it's a spitball is all it is. It's a piece of crap. You're seeing them putting this cornerstone in. It's garbage, and you're going to believe everything else they're going to build on top of it. You're going to trust it. You're going to trust anything this guy is going to say when he can't describe two single slits right. Just two stupid little openings he can't describe right.
And this works with quantum particles too, since
So whatever quantum particles too, la 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 la, whatever they are. I mean, this whole thing is just so made up. There's no quantum particles. This is just such nonsense. There's electrons, protons, and neutrons are made up of electrons and protons. And there's energy that moves electrons and protons. And that's all there is. There isn't anything else. Nothing else exists. There's little force bits going the speed of light, and you can call them magnetism, or you can call them electricity, or you can call them photons, And the rest of this stuff is these electrons and protons, and you change their position by hitting them with a force. By having a field that has little vectors, right? All their little vector arrows. Well, those are the forces moving, the little bits of the force. That's the quanta. The force has a momentum. It hits an electron. It exchanges momentum with the electron, and you have an end result, the Feynman diagram, blah, 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 blah. That's all there is. There isn't any of this crap, this superposition crap, this quantum particle crap. None of that crap exists.
they behave in wave-like ways.
Wave-like waves, whatever the hell that means. Wave-like, yeah, they spread to infinity and beyond. So again, none of this crap did Feynman buy, okay? So he just said, fuck it, I'm just going to do math. I don't want to know how it happens, but I certainly know it doesn't happen because it's a wave. So Feynman was going to tell you, yes, it turns into some sort of wave and it spreads over the whole universe and blah, 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 blah.
Send a cat towards the slits and it'll...
So he should have never done this part. I mean, why turn it into a cat? This is too stupid. So he's saying that's an electron. So let's just pretend every time he says quantum cat, he's really saying quantum electron. Now, it's really stupid to even talk about this experiment in the context of electrons. And so again, I'll point this out to you people who don't seem to be able to do the ABCs of physics. So again, you trust people who tell you something that just can't be anywhere close to the truth. It just can't be, all right? It's impossible for what he's saying to have any experimental validity or truth value or any of this crap. We already know electrons are tiny little things. Okay, we know the atom is, the nucleus is insanely small, but we know that this electron is also insanely small, and that this whole thing called an atom is mostly, 99.99999 empty space. All right? How am I going to make two slits for an electron? How does this even make any sense that I could possibly do an experiment where I'm going to have a two-slit experiment for an electron? So I got this little tiny thing, and I send it in a direction with momentum, and I'm somehow going to make two frickin' slits, okay, that are somehow going to confine this electron. Like, he's going to find this disturbing, like, oh, I can barely figure out how to get through this little tiny slit, right? I mean, how is that practically possible? I can't make this surface out of anything. What am I going to make it out of? I have to make it out of atoms. So I have to make it out of other electrons, and a proton has to be somewhere. And all of this stuff is tiny. I mean, we're talking about, a potato chip in the middle of a football stadium. That's this. Or a grain of rice in a football stadium, and the electron is a grain of rice, sitting in one of the seats. I mean, it's, and I'm going to make a slit experiment for electrons. I'm going to confine an electron with this mechanism. No chance. And it just seems so obvious to think, oh yeah, well the photon has to be, if I was to make a photon, that would have to be a collection of stuff, and that the collection could hit the electron, and one piece could go that way, and another piece could go some other way, and they'd all hit over here, and some of them would be in phase, and some of them wouldn't, and they'd create a pattern. That all makes sense. But again, electrons, how do I do this experiment with electrons? It's impossible. I'm just going to end up hitting electrons into electrons. And we know electrons don't even hit electrons. They bounce off of the field, the charge field around them. So yes, obviously they're going to deflect. But you have no hope of making this machine. You really have no hope of making anything that's going to give you a coherent electron pattern. So if you ever see a pattern and they call it the electron pattern, I'm betting it's X-rays. I'm betting they're photon patterns. They're not electron patterns. Because the way we detect electrons is to have some fluorescent screen, that lights up when the electron hits it. Well, guess what? The screen also lights up when an X-ray hits it. It lights up when, ultraviolet light hits it. It lights up for a lot of reasons. So, but you get it, right? You can't make a slit experiment for an electron. You do get that, right? There can't be any, there's steel surfaces for the electron. No. Electrons only see electrons and protons. They don't see anything called steel or, fiberglass or anything. They don't see anything but electrons and protons. They don't see anything else. Oh, this is such crap.
Will show up at a point on the wall. Send a bunch of cats, and their accumulation reveals the same interference.
So, again, he's talking about the same interference pattern when he hasn't even been accurate to the first interference pattern. So the double slit in light creates the complex pattern that has two patterns, an envelope pattern and a smaller pattern inside that can be mathematically understood as being a contribution from this close distance and then a contribution from this further distance, which has more wavelengths in it. So I've already done the analysis and shown, the fraud of their analysis. Clearly the electrons don't have any hope of creating the same pattern, so they'd have to explain how they can do that.
Pattern as a light wave. Now imagine you add another competing double slit experiment with another cat that shares one of the slits with the first setup. Of course, if you send the second...
So it's just basically you're just saying I just created a multi-slit experiment, and we have reasons. We already know why the multi-slit changes is because you've now added surfaces. You've added surfaces that are much further wavelength apart, and so therefore you have another contribution, another source. This surface will be a source of bits. This surface will be a source of bits. And the easy way to understand this experiment is that the cats can't fit through the slits. Just as this cat is too big to fit, that's what's going to happen. You throw something in and you're going to break off pieces. And so where you put a head, a tail, and a body back together is where you get light. Where you don't put them back together, you don't. And they have to be in the right phase. That is, the head has to be with the body and then the tail. And if you try to put it together with the body and then the head and then the tail, it won't be a cat. So you're just saying, where can I make a cat again? And that's all that's really happening in the experiment. And if you think about the sources always being the surfaces, you just count how many sources there are, and you just understand their distance from each other is what's going to change what is in phase and what's out of phase, what's going to create a head, body, tail. But their analysis is just nonsense.
Cat over and over towards these slits, the points where it hits the wall will give a similar interference pattern. And at this point...
So we know too that these slits are always tiny little slits. The interference pattern does not shift by anything that could matter. All right, you're talking about a millimeter slit. You know, slits that are very small. The pattern is always measured very large, that is, you know, in inches. But the fact is that the small tiny distance, 1 millimeter, is the only amount that they'll be off. So you're talking about 1 millimeter in a number that might be inches long. So obviously the two patterns aren't going to be in a completely different location. They're just going to be 1 millimeter difference. So this is more rotten physics. I mean, it's a really poor description to imply that the slits are somehow really far apart and that, you know, there's some sort of consistency, like they're 6 inches apart here and you have 6 inches on the screen, when that's not the truth. The pattern spreads, but the source of the pattern doesn't spread. So there's only a millimeter of difference. So there is no orange line and then blue line that are really far from each other. That doesn't happen. It's not a physical fact. It's garbage. It's rotten physics.
Point here for one cat, and this point here for the other, those cats never show up, no matter how many times you send them through the
So, and again, the never show up part has never been proven by any experiment. Again, you could use the microwave example, that if I use 2 microwave signals and I send them as point sources, or 3, in this case, 3 openings, 3 sources, the fact is that there's jamming can explain why there's a pattern. You can just say because this is where the 2 signals are out of phase, the same frequency, the same intensity, and therefore I can't receive the signal. But we know signal's still going there. We know the microwaves are still going there. So this is really just about putting cats back together. That's the sensible way to illustrate this, is just to understand. You break the cats using the slits. All right, and now you're going to try to put the pieces back together, and what you know you have to do is have them in the right phase. The head can't be in the same place as the body. You can't put the head inside the body, can't put the tail, you can't put the body inside the tail. That if they're not in the right phase, they're not going to be recognizable as a cat. But there's still energy going there.
Slits. Their wave-like behavior causes what's called destructive interference.
La 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 la. Again, so this whole concept that anything's ever destroyed, it's just compensated. You know, you can, well, it's like even the resident model, you know, of they'll imply that strings only vibrate at a certain frequency. Well, no, it's not that they only vibrate at that frequency. It just means that if you try to inject another frequency that isn't a harmonic, it actually is destroying some of the energy. So that frequency doesn't get kept. That energy doesn't get to bounce back and forth because it canceled out some energy. It destroyed it. All right, and the fact is no energy is destroyed here. Okay, photons aren't destroyed. They're just broken. But the energy, the pieces are still going through. Just like in the polarizing film experiment, you know, they claim the polarizer is consuming, absorbing the light. There's no evidence that it gets hot. No evidence that it melts or does any of those kind of things. The energy is, in fact, going through the plastic film. It's just that the photons are now in a condition that you can't see them, and that you can put them back in a condition you can see by just sticking another piece of film in and then changing the phase. And if you change the phase, then you get the head, the body, the tail in the right places, and now you can see the cat. That's the simple, logical explanation. They never looked for it. They're not interested in it. They're just obsessed with their silly, freaking wavy, gay crap, and that's it. You know, it's just, I don't understand why it makes any sense to logical minds that they want to use these half letters. You know, A, B, C. It's really cool. Why do you need to wave it? Why do you need to put them in spandex? Why do you need to turn them into these wavy things? It's a frequency. It has nothing to do with any frickin' wave.
If cats were light, these points would be in cat darkness.
Yeah, so more nonsense. So it's not dark on energy. It's dark on the consistent order. So it's just out of order. You can put the sign there. It's still a Coke machine. It's just out of order. Put it in the right order. It's still there. You'll see it. You've just made it so you can't see it because its frequency is broken. Fix the frequency, you see it.
But weird things happen if you send both cats at their double slits at the same time. The top cat goes through the top and middle slits and then towards the wall, and the bottom cat goes through the bottom and middle slits and then towards the wall. And things would again go as expected, of course, except that the cats...
So again, he's saying these are electrons. And again, so just understand, they somehow are claiming they've done some sort of electron experiment where they threw it at 3 slits. Okay, and the electron could go through either 2. It couldn't go through all 3. It could only go through 2, the middle one and the end one. And they're claiming they did this experiment. And again, I'll just say to you, how is it possible for them to do the experiment? It's not really possible, right? We know electrons are repelled by electrons. We know whatever surfaces they make, it's going to be electrons on the surface. They're going to be repelled by the surface, in a sense. There's no other option. There's no protons on the outside of atoms. There's only electrons on the outside of atoms. Every surface has a number of electrons. It can have a low number or it can have a high number, but it always has electrons. So it's always going to be a problem for an electron. And so just right on its face, you can say, come on, they never did this experiment. They use these metaphorical things. They play all these games. But they can't make a double slit experiment for electrons. You got to know they can't do it. It's not physically possible to engineer it. We would have to engineer it at using half of an atom. Do you think we can really build things out of half of atoms?
Get in each other's way going through the middle slit. Maybe the slit's too small for 2 cats to fit through simultaneously. Or maybe one cat is actually made of antimatter, so if both...
So more just a completely made up thing. Let's think of all the ways that we can do this with stupid things rather than rational things. Let's try to solve the puzzle by just making irrational pieces. Just make-believe pieces. Just completely idiotic, upside down pieces. I mean, it's just so far from trying to get the right answer. This is how you get the wrong answer. This is how you find God. This is not how you find the truth, creating antiparticles. This is dark matter bullshit. This is just such God of the gap crap.
Go through the middle slit, they annihilate each other and never make it.
There's some more magical annihilations, that Susskind will say, well, it's not really an annihilation. No, not at all. We just have a positive and a negative, and blah blah blah. They don't annihilate. There's a seat, and somebody can sit in it, and then the seat can be empty. So they can't even tell their story the same way. Each physicist will tell this horseshit story in a different horseshit way. I mean, and you people are believing it. You trust these people when 2 physicists can't even tell you the same story. Some other physicists will look at that and say, no, well, that isn't really what happens. And the charge field, either can go positive or negative, but nothing ever annihilates
the wall. Either way, the situation is now this. The cats traverse the slits in a quantum superposition of top...
Right. So more bullshit and more imaginary spin notions are brought in here of, you've changed it to spin. You spin the spin of the cat. One cat's upside down, the other cat's right side up, and, some other crap where that is so distant from your real problem, which is you can't even put cats through these slits. It doesn't happen. There's no way to build this experiment. There's no way to theoretically do the experiment. It's complete nonsense. This is all just made up theoretical horseshit.
Cat top, bottom cat middle, top cat top, bottom cat bottom, and top cat middle, bottom cat.
So now they're just doing polarization, right? So they call that spin. So they say that polarization is somehow the same as spin, and so we can just use the two interchangeably, which is horse shit. And we know that fucking electrons aren't polarized, so this is more horse shit. They don't have a frequency, which is more horse shit. They just made up all this crap. And for some reason, they're telling these silly stories about Jesus walking on the water and blah, 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 blah. Now we have to believe, well, maybe Jesus had a child and he can walk on the water. Maybe there's an anti-Jesus who walks under the water, upside down. I mean, it's just hobgoblin theory.
Bottom. There's no both cats in the middle in the superposition, since the cats can't traverse the middle slit.
Right, well, photons could, so this is again more horseshit, right? Where forces don't interact with forces, but yes, electrons can bang into electrons. Duh. Again, they don't bang into each other, they bang into each other's charge, and they deflect off of it.
Together. And since the superposition is missing the both cats...
So let's understand this superposition garbage means that the thing has to not be interacting with anything. So after it goes through this slit and gets superimposed, right? It's magically superimposed. It goes through the slit and now it's in a superposition. It means that no force in the universe can affect it while it's in its superposition, or now it's not in a superposition anymore. So somehow it has to traverse that whole experiment, has to go across that whole place to get to the target without somehow being hit by gravity or anything else. No force can interact with it through that whole period, or it gets de-superimposed, and it's no longer in a superposition, because we don't have to have knowledge of the measurement. The measurement just has to take place. Something has to interact with it, and as soon as something interacts with it, well, we've condensed the universe. We've decided this is our universe, and it can no longer be in any one of the universes. It's just, why do you people believe this? It's so frickin' silly. It's just so silly an explanation. Do you really think physical reality works this way? Would you really bet your house on this crap? I mean, if I forced you, to take a stand, would you really say, I'm so sure they're right, I'd bet my house on it? Would you really do that? This is crap.
In the middle option, the interference patterns change, and it's possible for the cats to end up in the places on the wall where before there were...
Well, they're not even interference patterns anymore, right? I mean, they're just lumps of crud. And again, why would they be separated by a distance? The slits are supposed to be so infinitesimally small. I mean, for electrons, we're talking about slits that are so goddamn tiny. To meet their frequency. It's really tiny, tiny, tiny slits they have to be. To be just a few wavelengths worth. Of fake wavelengths, of course.
Was cat darkness. This isn't at all surprising for waves. I mean, different...
So again, just draw some more of this crap that has nothing to do with the truth, okay? Just the magical wave interference crap that is just that, crap, okay? The math doesn't make any of this make sense. None of it makes sense. The math that works is the waves are coming right off of these surfaces. The surfaces are the point sources. The surfaces are the lighthouses. The light's coming from the surfaces. It's not coming from the center of the hole. That's the math that works.
Amounts of wave coming through the slits means a different interference pattern. But there's something weird about this when particles are involved. To see why, remember that individually the cat...
So again, when particles are involved, and again, all you have to do to understand that particles can always be involved, that surely particles can be involved with a photon, that they, Einstein and Bohr and not Bohr, Max Planck, they gave you the beginnings of this. They just didn't say it quite all the way through. But I mean, this explains photon. Photon is a composite object. It takes time to make a photon. It takes time to receive a photon. A photon doesn't interact with a single electron. And as pointed out, polarization is really easy to understand. Polarization just means the photon the quanta of the photon are just slightly out of position, but flying perfectly parallel because they were created by an antenna. The antenna inside the atom, okay? The atoms are what creates the photon. They shoot the bits at an interval, and that creates your relationship between your frequency and your polarization. It's all explainable. And that this is the quanta interact with an electron. One piece of a photon can interact with one electron, but no electron can reflect this whole giant thing. An electron is 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000, I'm saying 1,000,000, it's probably 1,000,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000 times smaller than the polarization of a photon. How does something 1,000,000,000,000 times bigger than the electron hit the electron and bounce back? Not possible. We should all know that. How does it even scatter? How does it do anything? Obviously, the only thing that can do that are these bits of the photon. And obviously, the important feature is this nothing space. This nothing space is just as important as the something space. And so what photons really are is density and then nothing, and then density and then nothing. And that's all that's happening in the universe, is that stuff is being put into patterns of collections, groups of stuff at distances, and that's what creates clumps of energy and clumps of no energy, which means nothing's hitting me, which means if something's hitting me from behind, I'm going to end up going forward because I just fell into a photon's empty space. So the empty spaces are just as important as the full spaces. But it can be mechanically understood. You don't have to rely on all this woo.
Darkness arose because the cat's superposition went through both slits and interfered.
So it was superimposed before it got to the slits. It went through both slits, it interacted, and then somehow superimposed again instantaneously. So that's all they're really saying. You have an interaction, then you can superimpose all over again from your new location. I mean, it's just so bad.
With itself to result in 0 probability of the cat ending up there. So if the bottom cat does end up there, it must not have been able to interfere with itself. So it must not have gone through both slits. So the other cat must have been blocking the middle slit. And if...
I mean, just get that. Get the incoherency of this. That, the photon was going somewhere, and they say, well, because of superposition, it knocked itself out of that position, so now it can't go there. And so if I eliminate the thing that knocked it out of position, that it actually does get where it was going the first time. I mean, it's just too silly.
The top cat...
I mean, if you told this story about how humans function, oh yeah, there's a bunch of mini-me's, all little ghosty me's all over the place, and I'm superimposed, I'm interfering with myself. Fuck.
Up in its previously cat-free spot, then it must not have gone through both slits either. The bottom cat must have been...
Must. They always use these words. Must. It must have. Our solution is the only solution. There's no other possibility. It must be this way. It can't be any other way. It has to be our way. Blah, 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 blah. When just a little bit of thought and you start engineering other solutions. I mean, it doesn't take any genius to do it, obviously.
Blocking the middle slit. This wouldn't be a problem, except that when you actually do this experiment, some of the time both cats end up in the previously cat-free spots. And we know that they can't both have gone through the middle slit, because they would have annihilated each other. So
again, that's the only possibility. So they just keep building this. You can walk on the water, then you can walk on the air, and then you can walk on the little blue stuff at the very edge of the atmosphere. It's just all horse shit. Build a horse shit on top of horse shit on top of horse shit.
Cat must have been blocked from going through the middle slit by the other cat having gone through the middle slit simultaneously, which of course seems impossible and is why this situation...
Yes, whatever. So the cats can interfere with each other, they can interfere with themselves, it's just too silly.
Has been called a paradox. And it's certainly thought-provoking if you like to think about local realism or contextuality.
So these are actual papers, and this is what actually gets published, is crap like this. Based on experiments that are theoretically nonsense. I built slits for electrons. No, you didn't. It didn't happen. It's not theoretically possible to create the same kind of environment. Electrons are charged. Your slits are going to be charged. There's no way of getting around it. You're forcing electrons to bang into electrons. That's your experiment, where photons are doing something slightly different.
Or weak measurement values, or the interaction between classical logic and quantum mechanics.
Oh, logic. Even the fact that they say the word logic when they're applying none. And you're applying none, frankly. You know, you the people, you the dupes, aren't applying any logic because you're not admitting the obvious, which is they really don't have evidence for all this crap. They haven't shown you a single dinosaur head here. They haven't shown you a single fossil. They haven't shown you anything. Any good reason to believe any of this crap.
It's not really that surprising, as long as you believe that quantum particles can be in superpositions, which happens all the time and has been incredibly well experimentally confirmed.
Okay, there we go. Incredibly well experimentally confirmed. That's the language they're using. Now, you could argue that DNA has been, incredibly well, experimentally proven. There's lots of things you could argue have been well proven. Superposition has been well proven. Incredibly well proven. So this is their language. I mean, if that isn't hype, what the hell is that? If that isn't just gross propaganda. I mean, it's a grotesque lie. Why not just admit the truth? We have little tiny shreds of indication that it could be possible. That's all you have. You have barely any reason to believe. Not a volume of evidence proving. You have exactly the opposite. You have anti-evidence. You don't really, it's not the real thing at all. It's exactly the opposite of what evidence should look like.
As we said earlier, the two cats pass through the slits in the superposition top-middle plus middle-bottom plus top-bottom.
And so, again, adding all of these features to an object that doesn't have them, there's no evidence that electrons have anything other than charge. Every single electron is like every other electron. It's just a little charged piece of crap. It has a certain property of being negative charge in the sense that it reflects certain forces a certain way, and they're all the same, and there's no spin, there's no polarization, there's no nothing. Electrons don't have any other feature. They're just charged and you can move them. That's it. No evidence of anything else existing. No evidence that they're little tiny magnets, that they have a magnetic moment, that they have any of this horse shit. No good evidence.
Which includes both apparently necessary blockages of the middle slit by one cat or the other. And it's this superposition that results in the changed interference pattern that allows for the possibility that both cats simultaneously end up.
Alright, so it'd be nice if we saw the actual experiment and some explanation of how they exactly built these slits that they put these electrons through that weren't made out of electrons. But we don't get any of that.
In the previously cat-dark locations. If all of this seems a bit weird...
No, it seems like propaganda. It seems like an aggrandized hyper story that really doesn't have anything to do with reality. It just seems like what somebody would do who wants to, make people think all the fish in Japan are radioactive, or somebody with some kind of bizarre agenda. Because it doesn't sound like somebody telling the truth.
Yeah, it is. But it's worth remembering that weirdness and paradox are not one and the same.
Oh, weirdness and paradox aren't the same thing. Well, they're close enough to the same thing. They both smell pretty shitty. I'd stay away from both of them.
And the quantum double slit experiment, whether you do it with cats or with electrons or photons, is...
again, electrons are photons, as if they do the same thing and the same reasoning. No, we understand photons are really small, the little quanta. Alright, and so the photon gets broken when it hits electrons. It's a whole different kind of reasoning. The interactions, both of them would have an interaction. Electrons hitting electrons, you can understand it's going to scatter. And you can understand that a photon made out of quanta, yes, the little quanta would scatter.
Fully consistent with the predictions and experimental results of quantum mechanics.
So again, fully consistent, even though his initial diagram was complete bullshit. Not consistent with any math that works. It's a nonsense drawing. The two-wave drawing for the double slit doesn't explain the pattern. It's just a complete nonsense. And he says fully consistent, fully consistent. So why do you trust them? The simplest experiments they can't describe honestly, and yet you trust them when they start doing crystals that are separating photons and all this other stuff that's happening. You're believing all of their crap, their LHC and their wave detecting machines and all their other crap. Why do you trust these people? They can't explain the elemental, the simplest experiment you could build. They can't frickin' honestly describe them.
Mechanics. Sometimes the universe is just weird.
Oh, so that's more the part of the cell, right? And that works for you people, right? Some reason you don't want, you know, when you hear somebody say the universe is just weird, it doesn't make you queasy. That sounds like religion. No, what the scientific facts were indicating is that none of this is weird. Okay, none of it. Even people, like it could seem weird that people, you know, knocked holes in other people's skulls, you know, 1,000 years ago. But when you think about it, you say, well, no, maybe it's not so weird because people are insane and they could think that maybe they could let the insanity out. You know, it has some kind of kernel of reasonability to it. And when you think about it, and that's what we figured out, is that the world wasn't run by demons and it's not run by hobgoblins and Sasquatches and weird shit. No, that it's actually quite understandable, and it all kind of has to do with this word momentum. And there's obviously stuff in the universe that we can't see that has momentum, little fast-moving little crap that's moving, and it all appears to move in straight lines every time you're looking at it. It'll always look like it was a straight line when you look at it. Right? And yeah, that's all that's happening is the little pieces are moving around based on how they're forced. Okay, and you change the force by changing the positions of the material objects. I change where the objects are. I change how they reflect the force. They change how the other pieces end up moving. And that's all there is. There's just a tug of war between the force and the matter, and that's it.
If you or somebody you know who maybe you're looking for a present for are the kind of...
Gross, $600 for a brilliant subscription. What is that, lifetime subscription to horse shit? Oh, look what I'll get. I'll get wonderful, stupid Schrodinger cat crap. Thanks, that will make you brilliant. Brilliantly stupid. Okay, you'll be the anti-brilliant. That's how they ought to sell it.
Dive deep into quantum paradox?
Yeah, dive deep into complete fantasy nonsense, all based on a silly, irrational mathematics. Ugh, it's pathetic. Ugh. So it's a minute of physics and then a minute of commercials.
Or the cool things waves do when they interfere?
The cool things waves. Waves are so cool. It's all this wavy bullshit, all this little magical blah, 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 blah. Oh, this is so queer and babyish. This is just wallowing in pacifiers and plastic nipples.
Or other physics stuff, then you should definitely...
Physics stuff. Ugh, it's disgusting.
Check out Brilliant.org, this video's sponsor, which has courses and quizzes about all sorts of fascinating wave mechanics and quantum mechanics.
Fascinating. It's all fascinating. It's like having sex with goldfish. It's fascinating. Oh, God, it's just so creepy to me. Yeah, obviously this isn't your reaction, okay? Your reaction to this kind of crap isn't to say, God, this is so creepy. This is the sickest religion ever invented. Quantum woo. Random. Oh, there's a random God. Ugh. It's disgusting. Alright, so let's play some of this. So this guy was sort of explaining that they taught him in school that electricity moved like a pinball machine, you know, because it's tilted and there's a resistance to the flow, I guess, or that it likes to flow in one direction or some, I don't know. I never saw that analogy, frankly, and when I went to school, that's not the analogy they used. They used hoses, you know, and water pressure. But anyway. And so then he gets to this point where he's going to explain quantum mechanics. So he's saying that, look, analogies is all we got. We have to show one thing by comparing it to some other thing. Because we can't just take a videotape of photons. So we have to draw it. We have to analogize it. We have to and then you screw it up, right? I mean, I do show that a photon is, well, it's like an envelope, okay? You know, it has a polarization, all right, has a length, you know, but it doesn't have much width because the little quantas are very small. And if I was going to show you it this way, you wouldn't really see any envelope, because it would just be a dot here and a dot here and a dot here and a dot here and a dot here. So it's mostly empty space like an atom. But this is an analogy, okay? And it's sort of, you can sort of understand the photon could be going this way, or it could be going that way, or it could be going that way. And that's its polarization. So it works. But you have to have enough sense to know, oh, it's not really an envelope. It's made out of bits of momentum that are all moving in the same direction.
I wouldn't waste it talking about Schrodinger's cat or local realism paradoxes. Instead, I'd simply say that particles, like electrons, aren't little billiard balls.
Yeah, so again, so he makes the assertion, except every piece of rational evidence indicates they are like little billiard balls. That they have a charge, that the charge means that they reflect the universe in a certain way. They create a certain amount of a force field around them. The energy comes in, it reflects back out like heat. It goes in, it comes back out in another form, a little bit different. And the fact is they're radiating that bubble of stuff flying off of them. And that something else, another electron comes, and those two forces are opposing each other. They're both going out, and they both make the electron move this way. Now, if it was a proton, it would make the electron move this way, which means it can still move this way, right? If it moves this way, if the force from the proton says go this way and go that way, then that's not going to compensate for the force pushing from the universe. The light from the universe is pushing this way. So now the electron will move into the proton, because this way and this way isn't going to stop it from going that way, right? I mean, simple analogies can explain the world. We don't need to break all kinds of structural physical logic. We don't need to go into the woo-averse. So, wavy things. They're not billiard balls, but rather wavy things. What is that? Jellyfish? What are they, then? What's a wavy thing? What exactly is that? Oh, a wavy thing that only waves this much, right? I mean, it doesn't wave all the way over here and all the way over there. It just waves here in some sort of weird way, where it waves more this way than it's waving that way in some kind of bizarre way, because it's moving in a direction. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Wavy thing. So don't think of it as something that you can describe, you know, that has shape, that has form. No, think of it as something that doesn't have any rational shape or form, and then say, I'm doing physics. No, you're doing imagination. You're doing storytelling. You're doing fabiology.
Like things, but rather wavy things that do all sorts of regular wave stuff.
So, he does put a lot of work into this. Nice production, blah, blah, blah. But he does this forced voice thing. He's just really Barney the dinosauring it way too much. Way too much vocal emphasis on, and it's just such propaganda sounding like shit. I'm forcing it. I'm forcing myself to have a personality. Ugh, not a good idea.
A lot of the mysterious reputation.
Yeah, I'm talking to a little 4-year-old, and I have to be goofy and funny, or he won't laugh and be happy, because I have to be silly and stupid, because I am talking about physics and quantum phenomena and superpositions and very complex stuff, but I have to do it like a frickin' imbecile, because I somehow think that everybody's a fucking imbecile, but they're smart enough to understand quantum wooey crap. So I don't know, I'm being very paradoxical, aren't I? Because I'm talking to them like they're babies, but I'm expecting them to understand something insanely complex. Man, am I ever an asshole? Sorry. But it doesn't make any fucking sense. You're talking something, people can't even figure out that deficit spending doesn't work. Buying stuff on the credit card doesn't mean you got it for free. It means you have to pay twice as much for it later. It's really stupid. They can't figure that out. And you're going to explain quantum mechanics. Oh, fuck.
Surrounding quantum physics just comes down to people not really being familiar with how waves and
regular wave behavior. Yes, if you believe in ether and you believe in a whole bunch of crap that there's absolutely no good reason to believe. And again, this whole idea that something waves to everywhere, but somehow when we actually force it to hit something, it only hits one little tiny thing here. But I'm still going to believe it went to all these other places, and it just retracted that. It just said, never mind, never mind. Never mind over there. You're not going over there actually. Even though he already went over there, he already created gravity over there, he already did a whole bunch of stuff while he was going over there. But all of a sudden, I just pretend I can erase all of that. I can just make it all go away because I just went over here. I mean, it's a silly, nonsensical explanation. Why do people trust these crazy fucks? They're talking gibberish. Quantum weirdness, see? I mean, they're admitting there's no good reason to believe this. It's too fucked up. I mean, it's too fucking stupid.
waves behave. For example, if I have a vibrating...
Yeah, so if I have 2 points... Okay, sorry, I won't keep doing it, but, I mean, he really is just forcing it. That's not reality. Reality isn't this, okay? Photons are not something that has a point over here and a point over here and a rope in the middle. I mean, unless you're Bill Gates, you're not buying that crap. Okay, they're not frickin' vibrating ropes.
String. Clamp it down to 2 points, I find that between those points, I only have certain allowed states.
So it's not that it's an allowed state. There's other states that are allowed. It's just that they will end up destroying some of the energy. So there's states, there's waves that are compatible with the existing waves, and then waves that are incompatible, and that they will force something going high to meet something going low, and they will wipe out the energy. So there's waves that are durable because you're adding energy. So it's just as simple as a pendulum swinging. Now, if I add a new frequency to the pendulum, but the frequency isn't consistent, that is, it's going to create lots of times when this new energy I added is destructive to the motion of the pendulum, that won't survive. But if I add energy, you know, when the pendulum's moving this way and I push it this way, then I've added energy to the system, right? So it makes sense that that stays in the system. But the energy I add when it's out of phase, I've destroyed energy in the system. So that's why it doesn't have any durability. This is about the durability of an oscillation. It's not about what's possible or allowed.
With certain frequencies that can exist. They're discrete harmonics created by confining a wave.
If you want this string to keep vibrating, right, it has to be, the energies have to be compatible with each other. If they're not compatible, they got wiped out. That's it. They don't exist because they were destructive to the vibration. So the only ones left are the ones that were all in the same phase.
This is exactly how something like a guitar works, or really any musical instrument. You confine a wavy vibrating system, and thus force it to only allow certain discrete frequencies or pitches. And in quantum physics, electrons do this too.
No, they don't. Okay, atoms do it. Electrons have no capacity to do any of this crap. Electrons are bound to atoms. When they're bound to an atom, an electron is in tension. And yes, the electron is oscillating in the tension, and you can add energy or destructively or constructively. That is, you can scatter the thing obtusely or you can scatter the thing consistently.
A free electron, just like any free wave, can have any...
An electron is not a wave. It's just so silly. So an electron in space, if I could just put one in space, he's just going to look at the rest of the universe and say which way has the least pressure, and that's the way it's going to go. And that's all it's going to do. It's not going to wave there or any of this crap. Now, electrons do move complexly, as I've described. So, I mean, they have complexity to their capacity to be moved by force. But the rules are pretty simple. So again, this is a simple model. You don't need any complex woo to explain why electrons are a little bit weird. Okay, because when they get hit by a piece of force, then they go where the force was going. The force was going this way, then the whole electron goes this way until another piece of force hits from some other direction. And when that piece of force hits, this electron leaves, this electron also leaves. And now the electron doesn't, I mean this photon, piece of a photon or piece of energy, quanta, and now the electron stops moving. And now it has to get hit by something new that sticks and then moves it. So electrons move, and then they stop, and then they move, and then they stop. And the fact is they move this way, and then they can move this way, and then they can move that way. And the whole time, at any one of these intervals, they end up giving back the energy that they were using to move. So this energy goes back eventually, this energy goes back eventually, this energy goes back eventually. But that simple model explains what might be perceived as the erratic behavior of electrons.
Energy or wavelength it likes, but electrons are negatively charged particles, and protons in the atomic nuclei are positively charged particles. And, well, oppositely charged particles exert an attractive force.
So there, he said it. They exert it, right? A virtual photon or something. An attractive force. No, they create a circumstance where they're moving each other the wrong way. The reflections off the electron force the proton to go this way, and the reflections off the proton force the electron to go this way. And by moving in those directions, okay, the outside world is going to push them into each other. They're not creating any pressure away from each other. There's no pressure between them, so the external universe pushes them into each other. That's the simple explanation. There is no pull in the universe. It's a push universe. Simple statement. It's a push universe. I'd bet my house on it. Would you bet your house on the existence of a pull mechanism as being elemental? I'm making a simple suggestion to you. Okay, these are the choices. There's a push universe, and that all the pulls just mean you haven't got a push. Okay, you're missing the push, therefore it looks like a pull. Or there's a universe that has push, something banged into something, and it has the magical pull thing that happens where something bangs into something and it moves towards for some reason. The momentum goes backwards. Which one are you going to bet your house on, realistically? Do you really think there's an elemental pull in the universe? Do you think there's really anything that elementally pulls on something?
On one another. So as a nuclei pulls on electron,
So he's doing the whatever Einstein gravity well bullshit, the two-dimensional horseshit description of reality.
Magnetically, there are two possibilities. Either the electron has enough energy to not be trapped by this pull, its initial speed is fast enough that it can avoid being caught.
So this is more about the energy of what's happening inside of copper when the both thermally, how heat is transferred through it, and electricity. And again, I'd say the model is kind of silly, okay, because we already know that the fact is the electrons are weakly held in the copper. The copper is bound, they're being shared electrons, but the electrons, the bonds between the copper are pretty strong because there's numerous of them, but they're individually weak, and you can, knock one out fairly easy. So they get knocked in and knocked out fairly easy, and that's all there's evidence of. And then when an electron is free, it's basically saying, I'm going to cause trouble. So as soon as you send the electron out, it's like me throwing a brick, and it's probably going to cause trouble for some other house. And then that house is going to throw the brick, and it's going to cause trouble for some other house. It's just a transfer of the trouble.
Or it isn't, and it becomes held and confined. We say there are free states and bound states, which means it's formed an atom. And in one of those bound states, only certain
Right, so this is so distant, this is so, what do you want to call it, abstract from the reality in terms of a drawing or a description, that that's not very useful, right? So you could say that, yes, the electrons that are closest to the proton have to have more energy to keep them from falling into the proton. So the electrons in the internal orbits have to have a lot more pressure between each other to be able to resist the lack of pressure that would be compelling them to fall, to be pushed into the proton. The pushing force is much stronger than the resisting pushing force. And it gets weaker the further you go out. So that makes sense. The further you go out, the less held the electron is. There's less low pressure between it and the proton the further away you go. And so that would be a much easier electron to hit and knock free. But anyway, I don't think we need to go through all of this. I don't think it's going to be very good. And it's getting into electricity, which is probably a separate subject, so I probably should not go there. I mean, there was another physics video where he has the shit popping out of the, everything goes into the magical whatever, the ether. And so the electrons are not, the electrons existing now are not the same electrons that were existing when the dinosaurs were here, because the electrons are constantly going into the ether and disappearing and then poofing back out again somewhere else. There's no evidence for any of that storytelling. Alright, so this is probably enough of a video. This is just so, the clearer and clearer, again, my model has gotten better and better and better, and it just answers more and more questions, and the more simple it seems in terms of what's really going on in the universe. It's just force, and there's just a bunch of matter that is forced to go places, and that's it. There's just nothing else happening. And if you change the position that the matter's in, you change how the force is going to bounce around. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing else happening here. The position of the matter tells the force what it's going to look like, and how the force looks is going to tell the matter where it's going. And the two are just constantly tugging at each other, and that's it. It starts there. Of course, that isn't it. I mean, obviously, there's so many complex reactions that can happen because of that. But the main one is to understand is this idea of what the photon shows us is that you can take this force and you can clump it. That is, you can take the force that would be this as an average in the universe, right? You could just say it all averaged, it was this kind of distance, and what you can do is clump it, okay? You can take that and clump it, and then there's nothing, and then there's a clump, and then there's nothing, and then there's a clump, and there's a nothing, and you can change these spacings, and then you could do exactly the opposite. Instead of having a big distance between it, you can have no distance between it, And this might be what you'd call gamma radiation, is force that has a really tiny frequency. I mean, there's almost nothing between the distance between these things. And you could understand that an atom, okay, could actually have electrons that have these so tightly packed, because these electrons are so close, so tightly packed. They're just tightly packed here and tightly packed here. And the fact is the energy is just bouncing back and forth through these two. So this is wobbling this way, these are wobbling this way, this one's wobbling this way, because this is the force bouncing back and forth. These are all things that want to go in a direction, and they can't, okay, because they're trapped in here. And then if I broke this nucleus, if I freed these things, you could understand that this might end up having a whole bunch of these little bits in a row for a certain amount of distance, and this would be your gamma ray, okay? And it'd be an incredibly powerful thing because it's got a bunch of push really close to each other. So no matter what you hit an electron with it, the electron's going to move forward. Well, then it's going to hit more force because it's moving into more force, right? And so then it's going to reflect real quick. So it's going to move and then stop and then move and then stop and then move and stop really quickly. And as it's doing that, it's going to be creating another kind of frequency that's going to be leaving this way. You know, so we can convert this into this, and then convert it into this, and then convert it into this, you know, even further apart. And you're just making these conversions about how compact these little bits are getting. So you start with a universe where all the checkers are in the right order, you know, all the squares on the checkerboard, and then you just start messing with it in a sense of where you start taking the space out and compressing and blah, blah, blah. So everywhere you compress the force, that is, you put more force per square inch, there's someplace else in the universe where you have less force per square inch. And that those forces, that obligated equilibrium is what means that everything is consequential. All right, enough. A little bit of rational analysis and you can answer these questions. They don't have to be answered with all of these gremlins and dark energy and dark matter and dark magic and dark. It's all magic. It's all voodoo. They're not looking for the right answer. They want zombies. They want mummies. They want all of this phantasmagorical horse shit to be your reality. And they're selling it to you. And it's just another silly religion believed by people because they want the world to be more interesting. They don't want it to be a mechanical, brutal, brain-dead universe. But why they want a mummy instead is, I don't know, I'm sorry, zombie universe doesn't sound any better. Fuck. Really dead or just mostly dead? I mean, you know, they're too similar to be worth anything. So why bother? Why bother with this woo? Anyway, sorry. Ugh, irritating.